welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. I've been so looking forward to this, and welcome everyone to our first Tea Time Talk. What I was sharing with Julieanne is that I just really want this to be a casual but deep conversation for us all to connect and act like we're together at a little coffee shop and open the space for people to have different kinds of conversations and just connect deeper with each other. And I'm so grateful you're my first guest. So excited. Julieanne, was the photographer for my brand shoot, which, for those who don't know, talking comes easier to me than photography and like visual aspects. So it was a challenge for me for sure, but you made me feel very comfortable.
Now it's my turn.
Yeah.
To go outside of my element.
Exactly, but it's gonna be fun. Okay, so the first question that I start all my conversations off with is, what is something that you think most people don't know about you that you wish that they did?
I mean, I think there's a lot that people don't know about me or don't assume about me, but I don't necessarily wish they knew because I'm selective about who I let in. But I think, I guess one maybe surprising or not so surprising thing is I hate having my picture taken.
That actually doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I was gonna say surprising, but that actually doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I hate being in front of the camera.
I know, honestly, same.
I find it like to be torture getting my portraits taken. I hate seeing what I look like in the pictures after. I'm really uncomfortable with it. But I want people to know that because usually when I get on the phone with new clients, the first thing they say to me is, I really don't like having my pictures taken, so I've been putting this off. So I think it's important for people to know that even photographers hate it.
Yeah. I actually think a lot of photographers would feel similarly because they like being behind the camera. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I actually really relate to you saying there's a lot of things that not many people know, but I don't want them to know because I am a pretty private person. And I get that vibe from you as well. Have you always been that way?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I think, well, as a teenager, we all go through phases of oversharing.
Yeah.
And we grew up with sharing everything online. So I definitely used to overshare or like trauma dump on friends. I didn't really understand. But I think moving here, I only moved here like 2.5 years ago. And I moved here after a lot of traumatic stuff, like immediately after a bunch of traumatic stuff happened. And I moved here kind of as like a rescue. I need a place to be safe. And I realized when I moved here that I didn't necessarily want people knowing why I moved here yet because I was still going through it.
Yeah.
And so I actually felt a privilege that I got to go somewhere new where people didn't know all of my drama. And I would meet people for the first time, and sometimes people would say, "Why did you move here?" And I'd be like, "It's pretty." I would just decide, do I feel like telling this person or talking about this thing? Oftentimes I'll even sometimes lie like about my relationships with my parents. One of my parents is deceased, the other I don't have a relationship with, which I'm fine sharing, but sometimes people ask me and I'm like, my parents are all dead. And I just lie. So I think there's safety in deciding who you actually let in. And I learned that from moving here. And now that I've worked through a lot of stuff, I am more comfortable letting people in now that I feel more grounded and know who I am here. But I wanted to privately deal with things before sharing.
Yeah, I think there's so much power in that because, well, there's one quote I love that I come back to a lot, which is speak from the scar, not from the wound. I think all of us have different timelines around when we feel like the scar is fully formed and when we're ready to share that. And it's not inauthentic to be private about certain things or to keep certain things hidden. It can create a sense of safety, it can be a sense of self-preservation, and it can also be just staying true to who we are, because that's what feels authentic to us, is to be discerning about who we share what with. Yeah. But with that being said, is there any, and you don't have to share anything at all, but is there any part of that story that you would want to talk about right now?
I guess with moving here and why I moved here, and why moving here was so good for me. And it was something that I didn't like sharing when I first got here. So I used to live in Philly, and I'll leave a lot of the story out because we'd be here all day. But basically, a lot of really horrible things were just boom, 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 boom happening in a row. With my health, business, my apartment, just so many things were going wrong. And I was at a point where I was like really hitting burnout, having a rough time, didn't know how to ask for help. It was also towards the end of COVID, and I had gone through COVID by myself. I was living by myself, working by myself. I'd never had anyone to turn to and be like, this is crazy. Yeah, so it just really, I didn't realize how depressed I had gotten, and how, as an introvert, I just got way too comfortable being alone all the time. Was just not seeing friends. And in the city it was rough too, because it was a very different experience than somewhere like this. Philly was very depressing and scary during that time. So I was really reaching a point where I didn't know what to do. I was struggling. And I had to evacuate my apartment after an incident I won't get into.
I remember you telling me a little bit about that.
And then one of my close childhood friends, she reached out to me and she was like, you need to ask for help. And a lot of my friends, it was kind of like an intervention. I had also just had a surgery, so I had a cane, and I was recovering from abdominal surgery. And I was like still climbing ladders and trying to work because I'm a freelancer. I had to pay off my medical bills. And my friends were like, you need to stop. Like, you need to actually heal. Like, you have stitches. So one of my close friends invited me to come live with her for a bit, because she and her husband had just moved into a new home. This was in Lancaster. I was from Philly. And she was like, we're just moving into our new home. The top floor is literally empty. It's like an old row home, 3 stories. She was like, there's room for an office, your own space. Like, you can just kind of have a place to heal, stop paying rent, like get off the hamster wheel, just take a minute. And I just kind of broke down crying. It was like, I really need that. I need that. I've never had that. Like, I've always just been go, 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 go. And haven't really had the opportunity to stop and to think about, what am I doing? Why am I living here? And so I packed up my stuff. We moved out of that apartment. I moved in with my friend. And then within 24 hours, their house burned down.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we can laugh about it now because everyone's fine. No one was hurt, and now it's been years, and so the house was rebuilt, and it's actually better than when they got it. And she got the second bathroom she wanted, so everything's good now. But obviously very traumatic. Yeah. And at the time, I was already struggling with a lot of my own stuff, and I'm in therapy. Love therapy. Wouldn't have been able to get through all this without my therapist. But the morning before the fire happened, that morning I was sitting in what was now going to be my bedroom and kind of like adjusting to new city, everything changing, leaving my friends. And I was talking to my therapist and I said, okay, I don't know how to convince my brain that I'm safe now because I've never felt safe before. And I just moved in with a friend and I'm giving myself time to kind of get comfortable with taking help and not having to do it all alone. But I just don't feel safe yet. How do I convince myself that I'm safe? And so I was sitting on my bed and we kind of chose a spot in the room and she had me saying it out loud, like, I'm safe now, I'm safe now, I'm safe now. And we were working through that. And then within a couple hours, that bed was gone.
Wow.
Like, so I was like, okay, this is going to take a while to come back from. So I ended up calling my sister because, as I mentioned, parents are not in the picture. So I called my sister who lives in Woodstock area, West Hurley. And this is the short version of the story, believe it or not.
No, this is good.
Yeah. So I called my sister because for years we've been talking about living somewhere like this together. And that was like a long-term plan. I didn't think I'd be doing that till later on. Yeah. And I called her and was like, hey, remember how you wanted me to live, in New York with you, somewhere upstate or something? How about I live in your house with you? Because I have nowhere to live. So she was, of course, really upset, but also like, yay. So,
how long had she been here for?
She was still adjusting.
Okay.
So she and her husband are in Brooklyn, and they were making the transformation to West Hurley. And so they had a fixer-upper that wasn't quite totally ready to be lived in yet, but I kind of had them speed up the process.
Needs to be ready now.
And my sister was like, well, I'm kind of in the process of transitioning there full time. So it ended up being really good timing because my sister was having a hard time leaving her old life. Mm-hmm. I was extremely lost, and the two of us are 7 years apart and had a lot of years to kind of review and go over because we kind of hadn't seen each other much in a long time and had fallen out of it. And we were totally different people at this point. We didn't know each other as adults. Wow. So I spent a year living with her and her husband, but her husband is still in the city a lot, so it was usually the two of us. And we got to really repair our friendship and, so it was a really great experience. But when I first got here, I was still really traumatized by the fire. And going back to not sharing, I realized with my sister that she and I would go to an event or go to meet her friends or something, and my sister would start the conversation by being like, this is my sister, she's living with me. And then somehow the fire would come up, and then I'd feel myself just getting really anxious and upset, and I ended up realizing, I don't think I want people to know I live with you or that there was a fire. How about we just don't say I live with you? Not that I'm embarrassed about her, but that when you introduce that, there's more questions. And then I have to keep, peeling back and talking about these things that I wasn't ready to talk about yet. Yeah. And so she and I had a conversation, and she totally understood. And so we started just saying, oh yeah, I live locally. And then passing on to something else. Yeah. So that was something that was hard when I got here. But now, I've been here 2.5 years, and everything worked out really well, and my business is here. I met someone here, and this is home now. So now I can talk about the fire and be like, ha
so funny, so casual.
Yeah. So.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I think it takes so much self-awareness to realize that you're feeling that sense of discomfort come up, and why. Because some people might not realize that they're feeling anxious or where that's coming from when they're in that dynamic with their sister. And then furthermore, to then be able to say to her what's happening and have that conversation. Yeah. Was that challenging for you at first?
Not really, as far as talking to my sister. Because I'm in therapy and she's in therapy. Yeah.
That's what you need.
So
really.
Yeah, we understand how to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And she totally got it. She was like, oh yeah, okay. We'll find another way to talk about it. I also found that a lot of my discomfort was just coming from not knowing the other person. Yeah. And people respond very differently to news like that. So some people, when you say there's a fire, they follow my energy and they laugh if I'm laughing. They're like, okay, she's laughing. I guess we're laughing about this. Sometimes people ask thoughtful questions like, are you okay? Like, how are you doing now? But unfortunately, the number one question whenever you say there's a fire, they say, how did it happen?
Mm.
And it's in a very gossipy way, like they want to know for themselves. And I just found myself really offended by that because I was like, who is that question for? I mean, to answer the question, it was electrical. But what if it hadn't been?
Yeah.
Like, what if I had accidentally burned down my best friend's house? That could have been a really awful thing to ask me. So I found that I didn't want to talk about it, mainly because sometimes other people's reactions would trigger me.
Yes, that makes so much sense to me. And obviously, for the most part, I'm sure those people aren't responding with bad intentions. But I think there's definitely something to be said for having that foundational sense of comfort with someone before sharing these things. I feel the exact same way. I've had the experience where sharing past experiences I've been through has been very healing for me, being able to start opening up and having those conversations and sharing with more people. But I still do it in a way that allows me to feel safe, you know, and I decide what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, when I'm saying it, and that's authentic for me. And I keep thinking about that moment you had with your therapist where you were like, I don't feel safe. You did that practice with her, and then the fire happened. So how did you begin to rebuild that sense of safety for yourself?
My first go-to is usually at the beginning is humor. Because in dark times, sometimes it's all you have.
Yes.
And at this point, it literally was all I had. So my friend that I was living with, who went through it with me, I had to take pictures of the fire, and I had pictures for insurance reasons. I had pictures of the bed, just like
for your portfolio.
Yes, for my website. And we scrolled through it, and we were like, I feel safe now. I'm safe now. And we're like making jokes. That was the first thing, is just learning to laugh about it. It's a way to accept this happened. It sucks. It happened though. But then it was rough after that. Because I was very misplaced after it happened. So after a fire, people don't realize that there's a lot of homework. You don't just walk away and say, bye house, and then move on to your next life. You have to stay around. You have to visit the house. You have to do a lot of paperwork, a lot of insurance stuff. And so I had to stay local. But at that point, there was nothing else there for me. It was an area I didn't know, and we ended up having to stay with my friends' husbands' parents, you know, and I was like wearing my friend's father-in-law's hoodie. You know, I just was in a total strange place. And it was, you know, in kind of more of a farmy area, and I didn't have a car. I didn't know how to drive yet. I learned that when I got here. Okay. So I was really just stuck, and it felt like everyone else was able to move on with their lives. Not saying my friends weren't impacted. It was their house. But my version of what happened is they were able to move on. Like, my friend was still a mother, and while she had to move her child somewhere else and take care of him there, the routines were starting to become the same. You know, her life was essentially the same. Her husband got back to work, was just commuting from somewhere different. It felt like everyone else picked up, and I was just kind of stuck there and like, well, now I don't know what to do. My friends aren't here. I don't have a job anymore. I can't work without an address. Like, I just like don't know who I am anymore. And it was really hard, but also kind of necessary. Because it was almost like being away at some kind of like rehab facility or something, where I was just sitting outside in the grass, and all I could do was therapy and journal. I couldn't go anywhere or do anything, or distract myself with work, which is a thing that I do. Yeah. So there was a lot of just angry journaling and thinking, and the biggest thing I realized was, even though I was completely lost and I didn't have my stuff anymore, I felt still closer to where I wanted to get, if that makes sense.
It does. No, absolutely.
Yeah, like I just let go of all the things because I wasn't happy in Philly, and I felt stuck there and trapped, and I didn't know how to get out. and I had a really cute apartment, and I decorated it really cute, and I was doing all these things to try to make myself feel safe, but I didn't, and I wasn't happy, and letting all of that go kind of felt good. And I realized I'd rather be here and lost without any of my things than back where I used to be with all that stuff.
Yeah, no, 100%. And obviously, I would never say to someone who went through something like that, everything happens for a reason. And, there's meaning in this, but it's so impactful to hear you say there was purpose in that for me, and it did hold something for me.
Yeah.
And, metaphorically, people say sometimes you have to burn your whole life to the ground to start out fresh.
Yeah.
The universe is just kind of like, you gotta burn your whole life to the ground.
Exactly. And my friends were like, you went through literal burnout. Mm-hmm. Like in your body, your home, like in everything, in all the ways. And I came out a lot better. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like there was some kind of universal energy. And I felt lighter, and without all of my things, I felt more free to just like go where the wind takes me. Now I'm over here. Mm-hmm. And even when I got here, I decided to not get my own place, not buy furniture. I wanted to kind of wander for a little bit because it's something that I'm really not comfortable with. I'm a homebody, and I love like interior design, mm-hmm. and I love staying inside and being cozy and never leaving. And it was really hard for a few years to just not really have furniture and to be able to fit my belongings in a box and wander and sleep on friends' couches. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got to know myself a little bit better. So I think to answer your original question about how I learned to feel safe again, I think it was learning how to feel safe in a different kind of way and learning how to just trust that things would work out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, finding that sense of safety within yourself, mm-hmm. like unattached to anything else, mm-hmm. because no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
Do you have practices or rituals that you turn to now to maintain that?
Mm. I go through phases. Mm. It's something I struggle with. Mm. I guess I'm not very good at connecting with my body, which is something I've been struggling with for a while. I work through a lot of things in my brain. I can journal, I can think things through, I can create, I play piano, like I draw, I do things creatively to release anything I'm feeling. I'm not so great at listening to my body and stopping and doing things to take care of myself. I really like routine. I have certain podcasts or certain shows, certain music I listen to at certain times of the day. Because as a freelancer, you need things to kind of bookend your day and, have some sort of routine. Instead of commuting to work, you can go for a walk or something. Yeah. So I'm good at that for my business. But in terms of my body, I'm really bad at, stopping and doing yoga. Am I breathing? Did I drink water? So that is something that I struggle with a lot. And in my therapy sessions, she will constantly ask me throughout the session, what are you feeling in your body right now? To try to get me to stop and pay attention to my neck and down. Mm-hmm. So I'm still incorporating that into my life.
I resonate with so much of what you just said. And they say you teach what you need to learn, because that's what I work with so many people that I work with, and that's what so much of my business is about, because I need it, and that's what's saved me time and time again. And that's why I think rituals are so important, and I always distinguish between rituals and routines, because although I'm definitely a routine person, they can be very autopilot, mm-hmm. and in the mind, mm-hmm. and rituals force us to connect back to ourselves and bring that intentionality into it. And I'm constantly needing to remind myself, how am I feeling? What is happening in my body? Mm-hmm. And to get out of my head, because I'm very good at intellectualizing my mm-hmm. feelings and my emotions. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What do you consider the difference between a routine and a ritual?
So it's not always what you're doing necessarily, it's more so how you're doing it. So I think the intention and the presence of what you're doing is a big distinguishing factor. And that's the main thing. Like anything can become a ritual and anything can become a routine. I think the ritual aspect is the check-in of what do I need in this moment and doing it for that purpose and really being there with it.
Mm-hmm.
There are some activities that are more rituals in a more ceremonial way, but I think in the day-to-day action of it, it's the intention energy. Really, the check-in, the pause is the most important part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for creatives too, because it's not your typical desk work where you're doing math or taxes. Of course, there's all that stuff when you have a business, but I find that in my job, maybe the hardest part is having to wake up and say, okay, today I have to be creative, even though I'm not feeling it. And so you have to learn how to create space for that. And I do have little rituals to help myself get in the mood when I'm in my studio alone and I have to shoot products and stuff because there's no people there creating energy. I find that as any kind of creative or freelancer, you do need space and time to do nothing. To just kind of let your brain wander or listen to music or just feel inspired by your surroundings, because without that you just kind of feel lost and tired, and it can be hard to create for other people.
Honestly, I think one of the most important lessons I've learned being an entrepreneur, or one that I'm really settling into recently, is the importance of creating enough free space.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard for someone who is so motivated or I like to push myself. I'm all about productivity and getting all the things done.
Me too.
And having that empty space has been a game changer, and knowing that empty space is just as productive, not that productivity matters, but is just as productive as checking off my to-do list, because I can't actually produce the work that I'm proud of, and that the work, it won't come to me
Right.
if I don't have the empty space.
Right, exactly. That's something that I learned moving here. I find that here people are really good at accepting the slow season and actually thriving and loving it. Like my partner loves winter, and I've always hated it, and I'm actually learning to like it because of him.
That's one reason I wanted to move here, wanted to move somewhere that had 4 seasons, is because I need something to force me to slow down, and to force me to have, I talk about this a lot, but to force me to have my own internal winters. And living seasonally has definitely allowed that, versus before I wanted to live somewhere where there were only eternal summers, and I burnt myself out.
And as a photographer too, it is nice that light affects your job, because there is quite literally a time when you're like, okay, day's over, sun's gone, it's a wrap.
Yeah, truly.
So I tend to kind of start to shut down once it gets dark out. I'm not a night owl.
Neither. Not even a little. Someone's like, do you want to hang out on a Wednesday at 8 in the middle of winter? I'm like,
no.
That's unheard of.
No.
I'm in bed. I'm curious, how did you meet your current partner?
That's actually a pretty cool story, and it kind of plays into the fire story. So how I met him was actually, I was out with somebody else.
Okay.
And it wasn't going well at a bar. My partner knew him through people. They're not friends, but they train at the same gym. I was sitting at the bar with a group of people, and the person I had been there with got up and got distracted by someone at the bar and didn't really come back. And I was like, hey, I'm here at a bar. I'm brand new in this town. And I was at a point where I'd just gotten here, and I was deciding if I wanted to stay here. And one of the things I was wondering was, what is the dating pool like? So I got on the apps and started figuring that out. My partner, Sage, came walking to the bar, and it's funny looking back at it now because we're both not bar people. Mm-hmm. We've like never gone to a bar together since the meeting. But he was at a bar because he kind of got his arm twisted into going out and being social because he's an introvert too. And the seat next to me was empty, so he just kind of slid in and sat down. And honestly, I was pretty drunk, and I had a lot of fun with him and a few of the people that we were with. And then when the night was over, I left with my original date, who was my ride, and I was like, what was that person's name?
Who's that other guy?
Yeah, and he's told me his name, but I was drunk. I forgot his name. I didn't even remember, and I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And then 2 months later, I was back on Hinge, and we came across each other, and we were like, hi, I know you. And we were both interested, and it was nice because we didn't have to have like the first date. We were like, well, we've already gotten a drink.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, let's just go out. Like we just liked each other, and it was just easy. We just dated from then on. But the cool part about it is that after the fire happened and all the bad things kept happening, my friends kind of developed a joke where they all said I was bad luck because any place I lived, things went wrong. And, I moved to my friend's house and 24 hours later, it's burned to the ground. When I had to sleep on a lot of couches after that. And anytime I stepped foot at a friend's house, they'd be like, hold on, wait. And they would grab sage and start saging me. Friends were sending me sage in the mail. My friend Joy, she does these little birthday paintings for each of her friends where she decides their spirit herb or their spirit fruit or veggie, and she paints it for them.
I love that.
And then you wait in the nail like, what am I going to get? And of course she painted me sage. Yeah, so I really started to connect with sage, and it was just, I had the sage painting hanging in my room at my sister's house. And then, of course, I met my partner, whose name was Sage. And so all the girls were like, well, clearly you got to stay with this one because you need the luck.
Exactly. Now he's your good luck charm.
Yeah, and ever since I met him, it's been great. Mm-hmm. Like, being with him is the easiest thing.
And you both being introverts, how does that dynamic work?
I love it. I would say our one struggle is like pushing ourselves to leave the house, pushing ourselves to go out. It's rare we have the same day off, and we will. If we'll have a day off, we're like, okay, how do we use this day off? We feel this pressure to actually do something. And then we'll end up being like, do you just want to go to like Old Ford and get milk? And then we find ourselves back home and are like, we did it! That was the date!
We ventured out.
Yeah, so we do struggle with that, but for the most part, it's really nice because neither of us ever forces the other to hang out or be talkative. We both go through phases where we're really talkative. We go through phases where we're just kind of silent, and we're very open about it. So one of us will come home from work and say, I'm feeling like I want to be alone tonight. I'm going to go read my book. Mm-hmm. And the other person is like, oh, okay. Like, me too. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes what happens is we will express that we want alone time. It's like we don't want to sit on the couch together. We don't want to hang out. But because the other person receives it so well and is like, that's fine, we end up hanging out. Mm-hmm. Because we're like, well, actually, you're pretty cool.
I actually really like you.
Yeah. That typically is what happens. So I'd say it works really nicely.
Yeah, it's so important to talk about all the different dynamics in relationships because there is no right or wrong, good or bad. It's so unique to each person, and you just have to find the person that it clicks with.
Yeah. Yeah, we balance each other out because like you were saying with yourself, I am very productive. I have a really hard time just relaxing and doing nothing. Even this past weekend I bumped into someone and they were like, how's your Sunday? And I was like, oh, it's good. I'm just having a really relaxing Sunday. I vacuumed, I cleaned the bathroom, I did my taxes. And they're like, what? That's not relaxing. And I'm like, but it is to me.
It's the Virgo in us.
Yeah, exactly. So I really struggle with giving myself permission to just relax. Mm-hmm. And he is more the opposite. He loves relaxing. And he isn't as on top of things. He's like, I don't want to vacuum, I want to lay down and, sink into the couch. And so we kind of help balance each other out. I push him a little bit, but he's also like, chill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always good to have someone to remind you to chill.
Yeah.
And to do the opposite when you need to.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is a theme in your life right now that you feel like keeps popping up? Because it sounds like you're in a different season of your life than you were years before you moved here. Yeah. So does that feel true? And do you feel like there are different lessons you're learning now, different things popping up for you to process, or what is that looking like?
I'm definitely in a different phase of my life. I think the phase I'm in right now is learning to not be so controlling and to just kind of let things be and trust in that. And I guess that's the lesson that I'm learning. Slowing down has been a big theme. Slowing down, listening to my body, eating better. That's a big thing people do up here. Yeah. Just taking better care of myself. I would say I'm in a phase where I'm trying to learn how to do that and prioritize that. And I'm no longer in the hustle phase of my life. Living in the city was very hustle bustle. And it was kind of shocking when I moved here and things were slower. But now I really love it.
I love it. And that makes sense to me because, like we were talking about beforehand, you had to really learn how to feel safe in your body. And I feel like if you don't have that sense of safety, you never are going to be able to move past that and then take a look at other areas of your life.
Right.
You know, you need that foundational safety first.
Right.
So now that you are more rooted in that, there's other things in life that can pop up for you.
Exactly. Pretty much my entire life has been in survival mode of trying to get from one catastrophe to the next and hardly getting over the thing that happened before the next thing happens, and which is why I've been so stuck up here. And it's hard learning how to not be in survival mode.
Yeah.
Which pretty much is why I'm in therapy. So it's not something I'm very good at. It's why I'm so productive, because it's almost like I'm preparing for the world to end or preparing for the next bad thing to happen. And I think I'm 33 years old, and this is the first time ever that I feel safe. I mean, outside of all the things happening in the world right now, we're not talking about that, but as far as my personal life, how I'm looking at my business, the people I'm surrounded with, my sister, my partner, his family, the environment I'm living in. I feel safe for the first time, which is great. But now I'm like, oh, I've never been here before. So now what? Like, hobbies? what do people do when they're not focusing on surviving something awful? Yeah, something that's a little bit uncomfortable for me. I don't really know how to do it properly. So I'm feeling that out.
Yeah. No, I get that, because sometimes it feels like the empty space is unsafe. And so it wants to push me into the chaos. And I have to be like, no, this is safe. I'm safe here. This is okay. It's just uncomfortable. Are there any fun hobbies that you've tried?
I would say a lot of my hobby. Well, it's hard because my big hobby became my job. So, so I often just get stuck in like creating the same, whether it's work or personal. A lot of my hobbies they've been by myself. Not necessarily fun things I've tried outdoors or anything like that. But I play piano, and I started with drawing. So if I get in the mood, there's drawing, sketching. I have a keyboard in my bedroom. I'll play piano. So those are the hobbies that I really enjoy. But as far as new hobbies, I am looking to find some.
Me both.
I definitely want to get more into fitness. But it's something I've been avoiding because it's uncomfortable for me. I want to try getting a trainer or doing Pilates, or I do yoga in the privacy of my room, but I would like to try to be a little more social about it and going into classes and stuff like that. But that falls under the whole issue of me learning how to have a relationship with my body, and I avoid that. So I'd be happy if I got over that.
Yeah. No, I get that. And that seems to be a common factor with why people avoid yoga, because it brings that mind-body emotional connection. And starting by yourself in the privacy of your own home is always a good place to start. But since you already do that, going to a studio that I really do think that finding the right teacher and environment that you feel safe in, just like we were saying, like finding the places that we feel comfortable being vulnerable in those certain ways. So
yeah, I'm very yeah, I'm very slow at like getting into new social circles or entering a room with a group of people. I never did well in school, like in classrooms that were big, and I didn't want to raise my hand in front of other people. I was a student that would fall behind in class because I was too scared to ask a question, and I'd go after school and sit alone with the teacher and be like, "Can you teach it again now that we're alone?" So I get nervous about that, but I think it's something that I should do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I only say yes because it seems like that's what you're being drawn to. There's no right or wrong or shoulds, and everyone's process is their process and timing is their timing. Yeah. But I'm excited for that journey for you.
We'll see.
What do you feel like you're in touch? If I were to ask you, what is your greatest desire right now? Do you have something that immediately comes to mind?
Yes.
Are you open to sharing?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's similar to what we've been talking about with body. I think my biggest desire is to connect with my body as a woman. Because I have endometriosis, and it was something that I didn't understand for so long. And I had my surgery for that right before the fire. And at that time, my goal was get this surgery, like it was almost like a new beginning. They go in and they get all the gunk out, and the surgery doesn't fix it. It's just temporary, and you have to have more of them. But right after that surgery, you heal, and that's supposed to be like a really good time for you because it's the best you're going to feel. And my goal at that time was, okay, like go to physical therapy, like really understand that part of my body, learn what it feels like to not be in pain all the time. And then it was fire. And all that stuff got put in the back burner and just became another thing I couldn't think about. And I feel that I've really been struggling with my relationship with being a woman and being a woman with a health condition, and having a small business as a woman, things going on in the world. So I think that I would like to understand my body better, understand my cycle better. So that's probably my biggest desire.
I really love that. And that's been a journey I've been on as well. Connecting to that feminine energy in all the different forms. It's really a journey, and so many parts of our society impact our ability to connect to that from a very young age. And it really does take the intention to want to work on that, to be able to make change. One thing that helps me do that is tracking the moon cycles. I mean, there are a lot of things, but that for some reason is just the first thing that popped into my head when you started talking about that. Because just like living seasonally, it reminds us that there's all these different phases of us, and our bodies are intertwined with nature, and honoring those seasons and cycles and tuning into how we feel during each one. That's been really helpful for me.
Yes, yeah. I think I feel really conflicted right now because right before surgery, I decided to go a few years off birth control completely. And I even had the little thermometer that you took to know all that. Yeah, and I was really connected with my cycle, and I could like feel in my body, I'm gonna get my period in 2 days. And it was great. But also I was in so much pain, and on the days I did in my period, I couldn't work, and I was like, I can't run my business like this. There was so much going on with my body that naturally it didn't do well without a little bit of help. And so when I had my surgery, I had to kind of make a game day decision of, are you going to get an IUD or not? Because we're going to do it while you're under. And I was like, yes. And still something where now years have gone by and this thing is my body and I'm still not sure I want it there. But the process of removing it and putting it back in it's really painful, especially when you have these issues. So I'm just kind of like left it there. The good thing is that periods are a lot lighter and not in agony, so I can go day to day actually running my business and living my life. But I don't know my cycles at all anymore. They've just been a roller coaster since being on it. And sometimes I get my period multiple times in a month, sometimes I don't get it for 2 months, and there's no cycle anymore. And it's just something that can happen with like your period getting less and less with the IUD. And so I found that really disruptive. And I have like the cycle apps on my phone, and it can't even figure it out. It doesn't even alert me when it doesn't know. And that's been really hard because I do have to be very intuitive. I do have to listen to my body and be like, okay, why am I crying right now? Did something actually happen, or am I just feeling emotional? What is going on? Why am I nauseous? Why am I not hungry? Why am I insecure about the interaction I just had? And I have to learn how to feel it and be like, okay, I think it's coming again. And I have to express that to my partner, and he always knows.
It's like, I can tell.
Yeah, so I've been finding that roller coaster is really not fun, and been making it hard for me to connect with my body. But at the same time, I'm so scared to lose that right now. So I think that's been really challenging. It's not natural.
Yeah. Well, I think it's okay to wait until you have more clarity around how you want to change that situation. I mean, I've also struggled with irregular period for different reasons, and so I've had that similar situation where I'm like, why am I feeling this way? What is happening? What is my body telling me? And I think that also can force me to be even more in tune with my body, because I do have to have those pauses, and I do have to have those conversations with myself and kind of process, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is being communicated to me? And I can also, again, sometimes turn to the moon cycles, even when I don't, even say like on the full moon, I'm not bleeding, but I know that it might be, or the new moon, like it might be a time where I feel more inwards, and so kind of using that as a fake cycle tracker when it's not, when my period is kind of all over the place, can be helpful. Yeah, but I have felt frustrated with my body sometimes when it's not doing, when I can't control it. Yeah, it's the lack of control and the lack of certainty.
Yes.
It's so frustrating. Yeah, but I guess maybe that's part of our lesson.
Learning to just let go. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. And that kind of a shift in topic, but you mentioned being a business owner, which, something that we can both connect on. And that has been such a lesson in no control and no certainty. And you would think that you might be able to have more control because you own your own business, which I guess like in some areas of it, yes, but overall, no. So how do you manage that, and what made you decide to own your own business?
For me, there wasn't really a decision that had to be made. I just kind of always knew it was what I was going to do. I am neurodivergent. I hated school. And I was always creative, and I always struggled in every other class. So the moment that I realized I was meant to do something creative, I can still remember I was 7 years old. I was in elementary school art class, and I remember we went into class, and the teacher was like, today we're going to draw these little masks, and she held up these weird faces, mask things, and put them on the blackboard. And I remember looking around the room at the other kids, and the other kids kind of just started drawing what they know. And that's normal for a 7-year-old. You're like, okay, I'm drawing a face. Eye, mouth, circle, you know?
Yeah.
And I just didn't look at it that way. I looked at it and I just saw the shapes and the colors, the patterns, and I just started sketching, like, from the corner. And I just knew how to draw. And I remember looking around and being like, hey, this is the one class where they all look dumb. I was like, you guys aren't doing it right. I know how to do this. And so I was like, okay, this is where I feel good. This is where I feel safe. And that always became, all throughout middle school, high school, the art room became just my safe space. I love the smells, the sounds, being around all the kids, mostly introverts. I never went to, like, the football games. You'd find me, like, in the art room crying and drawing or something in my feels. So it wasn't really a decision of, am I going to be a creative or have a business? It was more of, how am I going to do it? How am I going to make it happen? And as I got older, I fell into photography, and then I went to school for it. And then again, I graduated and I didn't have time to make a decision. I think after college, a lot of kids go home, and which is great, like getting to go home and really think about, okay, why did I get this degree? Is this what I want to do? Do I need to go out in the world for a bit? When you graduate and you don't have a place to go, you just have to jump into the world. And so I graduated and immediately needed to get a job and figure out, how do I make this work? Because let's be real, I went to art school and it's hard to get a job with that, especially darkroom. What am I going to do with darkroom, like, skills?
A lot of things.
And it wasn't really, am I going to do this? Do I want to do this? It was like, no, I have to do this. It's got to work. And I think that because of that, I just made it work. But I have a lot of friends that I went to school with, and after art school, they had time to talk themselves out of it and do something safer, which is fine. Like, but they did something safer or more financially smart. But I just was like, this is what I'm meant to do. It's what I'm good at. And I just need to figure out how to make it work. And I still feel that way now. I'm still just making it work.
It's such a gift to have that. I feel similarly with where I'm at in my business of, like, it's not an option. Like, I'm gonna make this happen, and it, like, I don't care what I have to do. Like, I'm gonna do it. And also I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. And that knowing is what draws me forward, even when I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? This is never gonna work. X, Y, and Z. There is still that quiet voice inside me of, like, no, you have to do this, and this is what you're meant to do.
Oh yeah, and you're gonna have ups and downs. I have days where I cry and I'm like, what am I doing? This is so stupid. I should just get something more secure.
At least once a week.
Oh yeah, like, I have those days still. But then there are other days when I'm like, no, I'll have a really great session. I felt it after our session together. I was like, right, this is why I'm doing this. Because it's such a specific little niche that I managed to find that is perfect for me. There are so many things I'm not good at. And somehow I found the one career where all of my good and bad, like, all of my qualities come together to make me perfect for this job. So it definitely feels like what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I love how you put that, because that is truly what I think alignment is just owning all of ourselves and letting it all come to the surface and letting that be our purpose. And it doesn't have to be a career, it doesn't have to be work if that's not, what it is for each person, but just owning who you are, knowing who you are, and stepping into that and letting that be what shines through in your life is not something that everyone's able to do.
Yeah. When you're young and you're in traditional schooling, when I've had this conversation with a lot of creatives, I had the same conversation yesterday with a creative where a lot of creatives think differently. And so when you're in school, you're in high school, you might be struggling and you don't test well and you don't fit in the box they want you to fit in. And it's really sad, because I know a lot of us grew up thinking we were stupid. I thought I was so stupid. I still struggle with having that insecurity. I have ADHD. I also am a little bit dyslexic. I don't retain information well. I don't remember names well. But just visually, my brain works so differently. And I think that once you understand how your brain works, it's actually more of a superpower. And I wish that I could have known that when I was younger. Like, I wish current me could have gone back and been like, psst, none of this matters. School's kind of dumb.
I wish that someone had sat me down when I was showing up for my math class crying every single day and said, it just doesn't matter.
Really, I mean, yes, is education important? It is. But staying in school. But I think that it's good that we're learning that brains are all different. And when you really look at high school, for example, they're training you for a 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. They're training you for a desk job. Mm-hmm. And if you're struggling in high school, it usually just means that you're not meant for a desk job. You're not meant to have a 9 to 5. You're meant to do something different. Yeah. And there's plenty of other things out there, so that's totally fine. It doesn't matter what grades you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think less people are meant for a 9 to 5 desk job than think
it's
they
totally
are.
unnatural.
Yeah, it's so unnatural. And it does seem like that conversation is becoming more widespread.
Mm-hmm. Especially since COVID.
Yeah, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
High school was almost the death of me.
Yeah. We would have been friends, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would have cried over our tests.
We would have, except for we might have both been too introverted. Oh, but hopefully we would have gotten there.
We would have found each other. Yeah.
This has been so wonderful. Living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
I think kind of what we were talking about, sticking with my gut. Even when times get really tough, I'm still doing this photography thing. Mm-hmm. And I think by especially physically opening my studio space and creating this space that feels like me. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it is a living room. There's a living room in there, lighting a candle, doing my little rituals in my space, and just kind of grounding myself in a space that feels safe for me and for other people, and blocking out some of the noise sometimes. I think just staying focused on that. It's like the one thing I know.
Yeah. No, it's so powerful. And knowing how to create a space that feels safe allows other people to feel safe in your space, mm-hmm. which is such a gift.
Yep.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
I also want to share, we didn't share this at the beginning, but my power actually went out like 5 minutes before Julieanne got here, so we couldn't make our tea, but I had my leftover tea from breakfast, and she had her coffee, so
we made it work.
We made it work. And
you can't control things.
Exactly. Can't control things.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.